argued at the Court of Appeals? What are your favorite cases? And 5 references. It's a lot of information to gather. So just to be able to apply to be a judge is a gargantuan task. So we get these applications and we review the applications. And what we do is our chairman of our committee puts each of us in charge of evaluating one candidate. And in the back of the application that the judicial candidate completes is a list of 5 people. Well, of course, you're going to know they're going to put the 5 people that are going to say wonderful, great things about them. So what our committee does is we call all of those 5 people, but I often ask those people, well, tell me another name of somebody that can say something good about this judicial candidate. So we actually go through, and I think from my perspective, the PD or the Citizens Committee probably knows more about that judicial candidate than anybody throughout the process, because we're made up of citizens who take their job very seriously. There's one lady that's been on it since 1986, and Janet Lyman, and she knows that this is a very important role that she plays on this committee. So once we evaluate each of the members, they all come before us and we get to interview them. And that's kind of fun for me as an attorney, because as Justice Hearn said, sometimes even once you get elected, you have to run again even if there's no opposition. So it's been kind of fun for me that I have judges who I actually have to serve before get to come before my committee. But we have a great, now they need to be on the hot seat. Excuse me. So we evaluate them and we interview them and we ask them questions. And what's so great about my committee is that, excuse me, the people that are on it ask questions that I may not think of as a lawyer. A marketing person may ask a different question. So you really get a good flavor of what that candidate is like. So once we all interview them, this last time it was about 6 weeks ago, we had 6 people running for a family court judgeship. And we interview the 6 of them, and then they go on their merry way. And then we all sit around the table and we talk about it. And we figure out, okay, what are we going to tell the Judicial Merit Commission about this candidate? And it is tough. And I thank God that I'm not in Representative Hearn's shoes to be able to have to pick which one to choose, because they are phenomenal candidates. And I think that's the most difficult task, is narrowing it down. So the way we do on our committee is we try to use adjectives that kind of set one apart from the other. Super, super qualified, or really excellently qualified, just to kind of give the commission a heads up of this person is the one that really stood out. So we submit that report to the Judicial Merit Selection Commission, and it's completely confidential. We can't discuss it, disclose it, tell anyone about it. And from there, the Judicial Merit Selection Commission screens out. Now, something that you all talked about earlier, I love the system. I think it is the best system that we have, and the best proof is the judges that we have on our bench are phenomenal. And for me as an attorney, like for example, the 8 things that we look for on our committee is constitutional qualifications, ethical fitness, professional and academic ability, character, reputation, physical health and mental stability, experience, and judicial temperament. Other than ethical fitness, for me, judicial temperament is the crucial thing, because if I'm going before a judge, rule against me, rule for me, but please do it kindly and do it in a way so that I know you've made an educated decision. And I think the best proof that our judicial system is a great one is that the judges that they are producing through this system do just that. I can't tell you, it's very, very rarely that I'll come out of a courtroom, whether I won or whether I lost, feeling like, oh, that person didn't do right. But once, the only thing that I would change about our system is to allow everybody out of the screening process. If you're qualified, by golly, you should get a chance to run the race. If you have the time or the dedication, like Judge Wilson said, to go up there and take 3 days of your life, then you shouldn't be screened out and not out of the race before you even get a chance to run. So if I had to change anything, it would be to let everybody get their day to stand in the lobby and parking garage.
Can I follow up on that? Because
Absolutely.
there are various bills, as we said earlier, prior to the change in the establishment of this protocol, there was no limit to the number of people that could run if they were found qualified. And there really wasn't a limitation even if you weren't found qualified. Right now it's 3. There's been a suggestion that needs to be increased to 5. The reality is a lot of members of the General Assembly are not particularly enamored with the prospect of having a lot of judicial candidates coming before them asking for their time and their attention. I'm a lawyer. I'm married to a judge. how difficult it is. So anybody that is running that wants to have time to meet with me or talk with me about their candidacy, I'm going to make the time to do that because I realize how hard the process is. But I agree with Natasha. I would like the system to be changed so that anybody that goes through this very arduous process, the screening process, and is found qualified, I think that they should have the ability to offer themselves to the General Assembly. Will it make it more difficult for those of us that have a vote? Yes, because there'll be more qualified candidates. The argument when they put in the restriction was to say, we're going to take the politics out of the election of judicial candidates. We're going to take politics out. Well, the politics, quite frankly, are now in the hands initially of 170 people, 46 senators, 124 House members. What they did, though, was instead of playing to that particular group, they said, we're going to take it out of that 170 and we're going to put it in the hands of the 10 people. And those 10 people are the ones that are going to report out the 3. Now, is that necessarily wrong? No. It was a decision that was made long before I got there. But if I am Jennifer Wilson, now I've been found qualified, and I've gone through that process, and I've taken time away from my job, and I've taken leave to go to Columbia to meet with the people, I think that the individuals have the opportunity to have their candidacies considered. They may not win, but they ought to be given the opportunity to solicit or to seek the commitments from the various members of the General Assembly. So whenever I have supported it before, and I will continue to support it, I don't know that it will ever change, but if there is an opportunity to increase the number of people or to remove the restriction as to the number of people that can be considered by the General Assembly, I would wholeheartedly embrace it. And I would hope that you would too, as citizens. You want to have as many qualified candidates come to Columbia and seek judgeships. Chip is right. The people, you elect the members of the General Assembly. I hear from a lot of my constituents that they are for this issue or for that issue. I hear from a lot of lawyers that are involved and say, well, I know this particular candidate and he or she would make a great judge. I take that information and play it. I pay attention to it. And I would like to have more choices as opposed to fewer, because I think the more choices you have, the better opportunity you have for everyone to be heard. For all, it will help in the nature of diversity. It will help in the nature, be it racial or gender. It will help in geographic diversity, so that judges come from across the state, because some are local and some are statewide. So, in my mind, if you go through that arduous screening process and you are found qualified, I would like to think that you'd be given the opportunity to at least try to get elected. That's not the system we have now, and I'm not slamming the system we have now. I think it's a good one. But that would be one of the tweaks that I would embrace.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm not sure this. Yeah, okay. That's one systemic change that has been proposed, and that's lifting the cap on the number of qualified individuals that come out of JMSC and can go before the legislature. Two others that have been suggested, as I mentioned earlier, the makeup of the Judicial Merit Selection Commission was created or defined by statutory provision. Is diversifying the JMSC more so with less legislators, more private citizens, more diversity on JMSC? Is that something that we should look at? Is shortening the process in terms of the length, because we talked about how arduous it is, how long it is. Justice Hearn and I talked early on about suggesting maybe we shorten it to 2 weeks. So if you could address that, Justice Hearn, and the panelists.
I think that'd be something that the candidates would really appreciate, and I think the members of the General Assembly would like it as well. Who gets elected as judge shouldn't be about the person that was in the parking garage every morning at 7:30 when they walk in. It shouldn't be about that, but sometimes it is. When I was Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals and I was in charge I was the administrative head of a 9-member court. It's a pretty big job. When I was running for the Supreme Court, I actually had some legislators tell me close to time, well, I just don't know you as well as I know candidate so-and-so. And I said, well, you know, I've been Chief Judge for 10 years. I've been on the court for 15 years. What do you mean you don't know me? Well, you haven't been over here every day like the other candidate. And it shouldn't be about that. I had a pretty big job to do, and I was trying to do that as well as run. So I feel that a 2-week vetting period would be very doable for the candidates who have to travel from other parts of the state to Columbia. Almost anyone can take 2 weeks off work. It wouldn't even be a full 2 weeks because they're just in session 3 days a week. They could attend some receptions at night, meet the members of the General Assembly in a social setting, as well as have time to go to their office and meet one-on-one with them. I think that'd be a great idea. I don't understand why we don't already have that, actually, because it seems like nobody would be against that. We all
Perhaps you should talk to Representative Hearn.
The family court judge from Florence who started this business of standing in the parking garage. Yes, I'll tell you who it was later. He's a wonderful judge, but he got this idea that it would be great to get the jump on everybody by standing in the parking garage. And I'm telling you, standing on that cement in high heels about ruined my feet. But I had to do it some because everybody else was doing it. And so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, if I could just, as a practitioner, when Justice Hearn was elevating from the Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court, you had the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals running for a seat on the Supreme Court, and she had to run 3 times to get that seat. And as a practitioner out in the field, we were scratching our heads thinking, who could be more qualified to be on the Supreme Court than the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals? So, I think there's a lot of merit in what you're talking about in terms of shortening that process and making it something that is more doable, less time in the garage. So if the other panelists could maybe address the issue of diversifying the Judicial Merit Selection Commission, that could be done by statutory provision, since the makeup is done now by statutory provision. So Representative Hearn, if you maybe could talk about that, or other members of the panel.
Oh, I prefer to the other members.
When is the bill going to be filed, Representative Hearn?
Well, I think the bill actually has been filed on a couple of occasions. What I have learned in Columbia, it's easy to file a bill. It's pretty hard to get it to move along. While we're shortening the time for judicial elections, we could also shorten the time for the session. And I think we'd have more people to be willing to serve in that capacity, because it is a time-consuming proposition. And quite candidly, while we are fortunate in the people that serve in the General Assembly work very hard and have, a sincere desire for public service, it is a time-intensive effort, and we are not always as productive as I would like to see us. That may come as a surprise to you, but the truth is, every day that we're there is not a day in which we are doing the people's business. And I would like, we just passed a bill in the House that would shorten the time, only by a week, but even a week is better than what we have now. And of course, this time we're going to go longer. In terms of the legislation, the reality is that our state has historically been one in which the General Assembly has a significant amount of power, and that's just the reality. I think things are changing. I think things should change.
It would take a new constitution, though, Constance, to really change that.
That's right. And so when you talk about anything that is going to change the status quo, there is resistance to that. Now, what happens if we changed it and said, well, we're just going to have a citizens committee? Well, who is going to select the committee? Suppose we say we're going to expand, we're going to reduce the number of House members and Senate members, and we're going to increase so that there'll be a majority from the general population. Well, who picks the members from the general population? The Senator Pro Tem, or the head of the Senate, the head of the House? Is that going to create a different scenario? Realize that whether you're using the Missouri plan and you have an independent bipartisan committee, those individuals are doing the same thing that the Judicial Standards is doing, or Judicial Selection Committee. They're taking all the information they receive. They're reporting out the best information they can and making recommendations. So, is there a political component? Yes. Could it be changed? Of course it could. Do I think that there is a will within the General Assembly to do that? Not necessarily. But I think what you can get, if you're not happy with the individuals that are serving, or with the number, then you can speak to your representatives, you can speak to your senators, you can speak to your House members and say, I think you need to tweak this system. I would like to see, there's only one woman on the panel. I don't think that is diversity. It certainly doesn't reflect the judiciary, where you have 26% of the judiciary comprised of women. We do better on that committee in terms of minority representation, but still not what I would like to see. So the best way to do that is for the citizens that are out here to talk to those of us that are in Columbia and say, we think we need a change. And if enough people make that assertion, you have seen that the power of the people, members of the General Assembly, if nothing else, they do respond. They do listen. Because if we don't listen, we don't get to go back. And for a lot of people, going back is a very important proposition. So be active, be engaged, and if this is an area in which you think there is a problem, articulate it to the people that you've elected to represent you.
Thank you. Any other panelists want to weigh in on systemic changes to the process, perhaps diversifying JMSE, shortening the process?
Oh, I think shortening the process would be a great and positive change. I agree with Justice Hearn. As I said earlier, that the time that you have to commit to spending in Columbia is really a huge commitment. And reducing that, I think that would encourage qualified people who would otherwise not consider running. They may get in the race because of that. I've talked to many lawyers who say, well, I would run, but I don't have time to go to Columbia for 3 months every week and shake hands. Or, I don't want to have to stand in the garage and shake hands. But that is the process. But I do think that would be a more positive change. And as well, as far as the commission is concerned, the one female who's on the commission, I believe, has been on the commission since its inception, if I'm not mistaken. And she is a non-lawyer. So I think that looking at the makeup of the commission and maybe some changes. I mean, right now the chairman of the commission appoints 3 members from the House, 3 members from the Senate.
Right.
And they serve terms, as I understand it. I mean, my experience has been there have been different members on the commission at different times. However, that one person, for example, has been on the commission since its inception.
Yes, that's correct. She's been on the commission since its inception. Anybody else want to weigh in? Our time is drawing nigh, and I know standing between you and the reception that follows this is me and my closing remarks. So that being said, let me say again, thank you for being here, and to the League of Women Voters of Horry County for hosting this event, and also to Coastal Carolina University. This is a wonderful facility, and it has been very interesting. I think we've dug down on some issues here in terms of judicial selection. I want to thank again all of our panelists for being here. Your insight and your perspective has been very informative. So thank you all for coming. And there is a reception following. Where, Elizabeth?
Yes, directly upstairs in the boardroom.
Directly upstairs in the boardroom.
Please join us.
Thank you for being here.